Now we're ready for our final screen printing. This is just a review. Don't forget newspaper to cover your table or some test print paper your ink, your stick from before that should be dried out, your squeegee from before that should be dried out, your sponge with water to clean up after, and paper towels. Again, I'm wearing my smock. Maybe I put my Fairlawn sweatpants on that have paint on it already. And I know that the bathtub is a good place to clean my screen if I want to continue to print more later, because you can always go back and print after. If you do that, if you clean your screen to print more tomorrow or the next day, just make sure you get it completely unclogged and make sure that the screen is totally dry. Otherwise, you're going to get water on what you're printing on. So again, I've pre-prepared multiple shirts because I want to do a bunch of these. My design for this is that Joy Sherpa, and I painted around this. I'm using the Advanced Students larger embroidery ring with the fabric here. It's a little bit tighter, and I have the detail through my negative space. So again, I always like to test print on paper first, just to make sure that there's no major mistakes that I need to go back and glue into it later. And I'm going to take my stick, and again, I'm scooping onto the area where the design is not. Now, I'm putting all my ink in there because I'm printing multiple pieces, so I'm not going to be putting the ink back in the cup until I'm totally done. But I do want to keep this off to the side so I can scoop it when I'm done. All right, so again, with my squeegee, I'm going to add pressure. I'm holding my screen, my embroidery ring down. And again, notice I'm printing in the well. This is the well area. So the flat area is face down, because the whole point of this is that your screen is touching the area surface that you're printing through. So again, I'm actually going to move this up here and keep moving it. Maybe I go across. Ooh, I have a bump under my table. So I know that when I lift this, okay, it's actually okay. So you see all these little dots that just, oh, actually you probably can't see it on the screen. Let me hold this up a little bit. So if you look close here, there's some little dots around it. That just means when I made my screen, the glue, because my glue is watered down, it didn't fill in all those little dots. I want to continue with this silkscreen demo, so I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to call it adding character, so someone knows that these were hand printed and not professionally printed. I'm okay with this. I also want to give these as gifts tonight, so I'm not going to be patient and wait. The ink will probably take maybe 2 hours max to dry, and then I'm going to show you later, you need to iron over these if they're shirts that you're going to wear to heat set the ink when the ink is dry, to avoid it from fading and washing out when you do wash these. Even though it's fabric ink and it shouldn't come out, it does start to fade sometimes. So again, this time I just put a book. You can see Mastering Judo, and my husband used to do judo. So a book, and I have taped the back so that my my fabric is nice and tight. Now I can see it's a little bit, let me put this down a little bit. It's a little bit off center, so I'm going to try to center with that neckline and lay my Joy Sherpa. Now that I've tested it, it's a little bit harder to see, so it might not be straight, not be centered, but you know what? I'm still learning, so let's just go with it. So again, I'm going to hold my screen in there, add some pressure. And the reason you put a book or a board inside there is so that, like when I did my first paper print, I'm surprised it didn't print funky, because there's something under the newspaper that created a bump. And I got ink on my hands, so here, I got ink on my hands. So I'm wiping it on my smock so that I don't get it on the shirt that I'm printing. I might even just grab a damp paper towel here, because I tend to be really messy when I do work, so then I do want to give these as gifts. So anyway, okay, so I'm going to lift this, pray that it printed. Wow! So I'm just going to mass print now. Let me move this out of the way, trying to get, and this is the joy of printing, of silk screening. So again, carefully, and again, trying to lay this as straight as I can. The computer is actually really helping me. Pulling the ink through that negative space. I hold my breath because these shirts now are for my friends. Pull this up. Every time. It's always exciting. I know how it's going to turn out, but I always get so excited. When we're live in the classroom, this is when I start dancing around the room because you guys create such cool stuff. Sometimes if you forget to bring a shirt, I have you silkscreen my smock. So let me see if you can see. Someone did a horse one year, so my smock has this really cool graphic of a horse. Because my daughter rides, so I thought let's copy that for myself. Now I'm definitely getting ink all over me. So before I even touch this, I'm going to make sure my hands are clean using that damp paper towel and my smock. Or my Fairlawn sweatpants, because they already have paint on them. So let me lift this up. It's so exciting, right? And then one more. Now this one's going to be interesting, because notice the color is a dark gray and I'm printing with black. So it's not going to be as readable as the bright, bold colors. And I did that on purpose. Okay, this is the last shirt. So now I'm going to go ahead and scrape my excess ink into my cup. Because maybe I want to go buy some more knee-highs and nylons and make some other designs and reuse my embroidery ring. I'm going to pick this up first. I know there's still more ink in there, but let me pick this up. And you can see now, this is a little bit harder to read because it's black on a dark gray. So just be aware, if you are printing with blue ink, you might not want to print on a blue shirt unless you want that effect. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm just going to put this on scrap paper. Actually, maybe I'll keep this. I'll do one more of these. Okay, so now I'm just taking my squeegee and I'm trying to get as much ink off of my screen. So I'm not necessarily screen printing right now. I'm kind of cleaning up. I'm taking my squeegee and I'm getting all that ink up. It just makes the cleanup easier. You definitely don't want to run this in the sink if you've got lots of ink on it, because the ink will then clog the sink. So again, I'm going to lift that. Ooh, that's kind of cool when the ink is not solid. Love it. Okay. Obviously, I like happy accidents. Now I'm going to clean. So remember, take your sponge or a rag even. Squeeze out all that extra water. And all I'm trying to do, honestly, is just unclog, get all of the ink out of the hole. So in the classroom, we try to clean this because we recycled the screens. In this case, I'm not going to do that. This is my own personal screen. I definitely want to print more of these later. So I'm going to look and say, you know what? It's still kind of clogged in some of those areas. So I'm going to get a new piece of paper and rinse out my sponge. Squeeze that out. It might be easier if you have a bucket, but I'm just, for the sake of if you're working in your bedroom, maybe you don't have a lot of space. So I'm just trying to get this super clean. Now, let me lift this. Yeah, now you can see with the water what it does. Let me go back and get some more paper. Now I'm going to take my paper towel and do the same thing. I'm just worrying about the areas where my letters are, because this is a permanent screen now, meaning I'm going to reprint over and over. However, this is interesting. Let me see if you can see better. There's something dark underneath. Let me do this. So, no, you can't see. So I can see, let me zoom in there a little bit. The J is not as clean of an edge anymore. So when I clean this, I actually cleaned some of the glue off of it. So once this dries, if I want to print again later, before I do that, I'm going to go back over this and clean up some of those edges with glue again. So kind of just fix up any areas before I print from it again. But now I feel like this is clean enough. At least my graphic area is clean enough. I'm not worried about the ink area, because when it dries, it's just going to mask out the same way the glue is masking out my background. And again, make sure you clean up really well. put all your stuff in a safe area to dry. And I'll do one more demo later on how to iron to heat set your ink.